Some lives feel different, as if they are the final step before something greater. If you've always sensed that this is your last incarnation, you are not imagining it. The signs are real, and once you recognize them, everything changes. The last life. Introduction. Beyond the illusion of time and identity, there exists a moment of awakening, a final threshold where the soul no longer returns. You are standing at that edge now, not by accident, but because something in you has always known. For lifetimes, you have played the game, learned the lessons, and followed the cycle. But what if reincarnation was never about growth, only remembrance? What if the ultimate liberation is not about becoming more, but realizing you were never separate to begin with? This audiobook is not a teaching, it is a recognition. A mirror held up to the part of you that already understands. The moment you see through the illusion of self, the cycle ends. You will not be told what to believe, because belief is another form of attachment. Instead, you will be guided to an undeniable truth, one that was always waiting beneath the surface. There are signs that reveal when a soul is nearing its final passage. Signs that, once understood, cannot be unseen. If you have felt the pull of something beyond this world, the quiet detachment from its illusions, and the sense that you are watching the dream rather than living inside it, then this audiobook is not just knowledge. It is confirmation. Something within you already knows why you are here. And once you hear these words, you may never see reality the same way again. Are you ready to break free from the cycle of rebirth? If you feel the pull, type "I am ready" in the comments to signal the universe. Don't forget to like this audiobook and subscribe. Become one of the first 1,000 aligned souls to step into their last life and transcend the illusion. Chapter 1. The Purpose of Reincarnation. Why souls keep returning. Many spiritual traditions teach that life is not a one-time experience, but a continuous cycle. Souls return to the physical world repeatedly, each time taking on a new identity, a new body, and a new set of experiences. But why does this cycle continue? What keeps souls bound to the wheel of reincarnation? Understanding this is the first step to breaking free. The main reason souls reincarnate is unresolved karma, unfinished experiences, lingering desires, and emotional attachments. Every action, thought, and emotion leaves an imprint on the soul. These imprints act like strings, pulling the soul back into the cycle of birth and rebirth. If a person lived a life filled with greed, anger, or longing, those emotions do not disappear when the body dies. Instead, they carry forward, shaping the conditions of the next life. For example, someone who deeply desires wealth but never attains it may be born into another life where they continue that same pursuit. A person who harbors resentment may find themselves in a situation that forces them to face forgiveness. The cycle repeats, not because the soul is progressing, but because it remains attached to unresolved lessons. In truth, the soul is not bound by an external force. It is bound by its own unfulfilled cravings and attachments. Many believe that reincarnation is a journey of spiritual evolution, that with each life, the soul becomes wiser and more enlightened. But what if this belief is part of the illusion? The idea that we must keep learning and improving keeps the cycle going. It makes souls feel as if they must return to fix things, to complete unfinished lessons. But in reality, the lessons never end because the cycle itself creates more experiences to resolve. A person might be born into a life of struggle, overcome great challenges, and think they have grown. But in the next life, they may face similar struggles in a different form. They believe they are evolving, but they are only moving in circles, mistaking repetition for progress. True freedom comes not from perfecting the self, but from realizing that there is nothing left to perfect. The moment a soul recognizes this, the need to reincarnate begins to dissolve. If reincarnation is a cycle, why don't we remember our past lives? Wouldn't remembering make it easier to learn and move forward? The truth is, forgetting is what keeps the cycle running. If people remembered their past mistakes, attachments, and emotions, they would recognize the pattern. They would see that they have been through this before. But the system prevents this awareness. Each time a soul enters a new life, its memory is wiped clean, forcing it to start again as if for the first time. This ensures that souls remain invested in their current experience. If they knew they had lived countless lives chasing the same things, love, power, success, they might realize the futility of it all. They might start to question why they keep returning, and questioning is the first step to breaking free. Most people think of time as a straight path, moving from past to present to future. But what if time is not a line at all? Some theories suggest that all lives are happening simultaneously, just viewed from different perspectives. This would mean that reincarnation is not a forward-moving process, but an infinite loop where different versions of the same soul experience different realities at once. If this is true, then exiting the cycle is not about progressing forward. It's about stepping outside of time itself. It means understanding that the soul is not moving through lives. It is trapped in a reflection of its own consciousness. Realizing this is key to breaking free from the illusion. Most people think that escaping reincarnation means reaching a high level of wisdom or spiritual achievement. But what if it's not about gaining more knowledge, but about seeing through the illusion entirely? When a soul stops chasing, stops striving, and realizes that there is nothing more to learn, it begins to wake up. The desire to return disappears, and with it, the cycle ends. Breaking free is not about becoming something greater. It is about realizing that there was never anything to become in the first place. Chapter 2. A deep sense that this is the final round for those nearing the end of their reincarnation cycle. There is an indescribable feeling, an inner knowing that this life is the last. This is not based on external knowledge, spiritual texts, or philosophical ideas. It is a deep, wordless certainty that does not waver. Unlike those who feel they have many lives left to live, those at the end of their cycle recognize that the journey is concluding. This realization is not accompanied by fear or sadness, but by a quiet acceptance. Some truths are not learned, they are simply known. You may have had this sense since childhood, or felt it arise as you grew older. It is not an idea formed through logic, nor is it something you seek to prove to others. Instead, it sits deep within you, untouched by doubt. This knowing does not come with grand revelations or mystical visions. It is subtle yet absolute. There is no excitement, no urgency, and no need to tell anyone about it. It is simply a recognition that something is finishing, that this existence is the closing chapter of a long and complex journey. Unlike those who still feel they have much to achieve, much to learn, or much to experience, you feel none of these urges. There is no longing to keep going, no unfinished business pulling you back. This is not the result of dissatisfaction or despair, but of a quiet, natural completion. For most people, the idea of another life brings comfort or excitement. They cling to the hope that they will return to correct their mistakes, experience more joy, or reunite with loved ones. But for you, there is no such desire. The idea of returning feels foreign, unnecessary. It is not that you reject life or resent existence. It is simply that the cycle no longer holds anything for you. Others may chase another lifetime to improve themselves or fulfill their ambitions, but you feel no such pull. You are not trying to escape, nor are you resisting what comes next. Instead, you are simply at peace with the fact that there is no need for another round. This does not mean you reject life as it is. You live fully, but without attachment to the future. You engage with the world, but without feeling bound to it. While others grasp for another chance, another lesson, another experience, you feel complete. Most people feel a deep sense of incompletion. They are always chasing, always searching for something beyond their reach. Some seek purpose, others seek love, and others seek knowledge. They feel as though they must achieve, transform, or master something before they can move on. But you do not share this feeling. There is no lingering restlessness, no inner demand to find meaning in every experience. You are not driven to chase purpose or shape your life into something more. You simply exist, knowing that nothing is missing. This does not mean you are passive or indifferent. You may still have goals, you may still create, and you may still engage with the world. But these actions do not stem from a feeling of lack. You do not create because you must. You create because you can. You do not seek meaning because you are lost. You live because you are free. This is what sets you apart from those who will return. They are still searching. You are not. Many spiritual traditions speak of soul contracts, agreements made before birth to experience certain lessons, resolve past karma, or assist others on their journey. These contracts bind souls to the cycle, keeping them entangled in obligations across multiple lifetimes. But for you, these contracts feel non-existent. You do not feel burdened by past debts, nor do you sense any duty to correct unfinished work. There is no lingering guilt, no unresolved ties that demand resolution. The weight of past lives has lifted, and you are no longer bound to correct or fix anything. Some people feel compelled to heal ancestral wounds, to uplift humanity, or to make amends for past mistakes. But you do not carry this responsibility. This does not mean you are cold or uncaring. It simply means you are free. Your existence is not driven by a sense of duty, but by an effortless presence. Most people are pulled forward by desire. They want love, recognition, power, security, or knowledge. Even spiritual seekers often desire enlightenment, seeking it as if it were a prize to be won. These desires keep souls spinning on the wheel of reincarnation, always reaching but never arriving. But for you, these cravings have dissolved. You do not seek status, admiration, or validation. You do not chase after relationships to feel whole. You do not hunger for experiences to fill an inner void. There is no void. There is only stillness. This stillness is not empty. It is full. It is a quiet contentment that does not need to be named or explained. It is not apathy, nor is it detachment in the way most people understand. It is simply the absence of craving, the absence of the force that keeps the cycle turning. When there is nothing pulling you forward, nothing left to chase, and nothing left undone, the cycle ends on its own, not through struggle, not through effort, but through a simple, natural falling away. Chapter 3. The world feels scripted, like a dream. You're waking up from, at a certain stage in spiritual awareness, the world stops feeling entirely real. It no longer appears as a chaotic, unpredictable place where random events occur. Instead, it begins to feel structured, as if unfolding according to a script. Encounters, conversations, and even the way people behave start to seem eerily familiar, as if you are watching something you have already seen. This realization is not intellectual, it is felt, and once you notice it, you cannot unsee it. There is a sense that the people around you are not fully present in the same way you are. They move through their routines, responding in predictable patterns, rarely questioning the nature of their reality. It's as if they are running on a program, following loops that repeat endlessly. You may try to shake them out of it to provoke a deeper response, but they return to their scripts as if the lines were written for them long ago. Conversations feel rehearsed. Reactions seem automated. The deeper you look, the more obvious it becomes. Many people are moving unconsciously through life, unaware that they are in a story, unaware that they are repeating the same patterns, lifetime after lifetime. At the same time, the world itself starts revealing its structure. What once seemed random no longer feels that way. You notice how events line up with perfect timing, how things fall into place in ways that defy probability. It is as if you are watching a stage play where the scenes are meticulously arranged. You think of someone and they suddenly call. A phrase you just heard appears in the next conversation. Numbers repeat in ways too precise to be coincidence. These synchronicities become undeniable. They are not tricks of the mind or mere coincidence. They are glimpses of the hidden order beneath the surface. The more you notice, the clearer it becomes. Life is not a series of accidents. It is a designed experience playing out exactly as it should. With this realization, the nature of reality itself begins to shift. What once felt solid and unchangeable starts to feel flexible, like a lucid dream. When you are asleep and realize you are dreaming, the dream world does not disappear. It simply loses its grip on you. You can change the scenery, interact with the dream in new ways, and even wake up from it entirely. In waking life, a similar effect begins to happen. The boundaries that once seemed rigid become more fluid. The way people respond to you changes based on your inner state. The things you focus on materialize faster. You realize that the physical world is not as fixed as you once believed. It is a projection of consciousness, shifting in response to your awareness. Then something even stranger happens. You begin to notice small breaks in reality, tiny moments where the illusion falters, time skips, space bends. A moment that should have taken minutes happens in seconds. People recall things differently, as if two versions of reality have overlapped. These are not major, earth-shattering events, but subtle cracks in the structure of the illusion. Like an actor breaking character for a split second before returning to the scene, reality shows its seams, revealing that it is not as seamless as it once appeared. At first, these experiences are unsettling. They challenge everything you have believed about the world. But soon, they become familiar. You no longer panic when the script feels too obvious or when reality winks at you with synchronicity. Instead, you begin to accept it for what it is, a carefully designed experience, a dream that you are in the process of waking up from. Chapter 4. You no longer fear death. Not as an idea, but as a deep knowing, there comes a moment in spiritual awareness when death no longer holds the same weight. It does not loom as an unknown terror, nor does it spark existential panic. Instead, it feels like a simple transition, a doorway that has been walked through before and will be walked through again. This is not just an intellectual acceptance, nor is it blind faith. It is a deep knowing that exists beyond logic. Death is not the opposite of life, nor is it an end. It is merely a shift in awareness, as natural as moving from one room to another. At some point, there arises a quiet realization. You have already died before, whether through vivid dreams, deep meditative states, or unexplainable flashes of memory. Glimpses of past endings surface. These are not dramatic recollections of tragic ends, nor do they always come with clear stories attached. Instead, they appear as feelings, sensations of release, of moving beyond the body, of stepping into something vast and timeless. Some moments may even carry the memory of transition itself, the final breath, the dissolving of identity, the peaceful surrender into something greater. These experiences do not cause fear. They confirm what the soul has always known. The difference between the mind and the soul becomes clear. The mind, ruled by ego, clings to existence, fearing the unknown, resisting endings. It sees death as the loss of self, the erasure of everything it has built. This fear is not natural. It is programmed. It comes from attachment to identity, to form, to the idea that existence must continue in the way it has always been known. But beneath that, the soul is calm. It does not resist because it knows that nothing real is ever lost. The fear belongs to the illusion, not to the truth. And once this is understood, death is no longer an enemy. Sometimes this understanding arrives not through thought, but through experience. There are moments in life that feel like near-death experiences, even without physically dying. It could be an instant of overwhelming stillness, where the self dissolves and the vastness of existence is revealed. It could be a sudden shift in perception, where the world momentarily loses its solidity, and something far greater is glimpsed. These moments are not frightening, they are peaceful. They bring the kind of clarity that cannot be taught, only felt. They show that existence extends beyond the physical, and that what is feared as an end is merely a change in state. With this awareness, the relationship with life itself changes. It does not mean a desire to leave, nor does it create recklessness. It is not about rejecting the human experience, but simply not being bound by it. There is no desperate clinging to every moment, no anxious attempt to hold on to youth, status, or survival. Life is valued, but it is not feared. The difference is subtle but profound. It is the freedom of knowing that whether in this body or beyond it, existence continues. The story of identity may shift, but the awareness behind it remains. This realization does not make one careless. It makes one present. When death is no longer feared, life is lived more fully. There is no hesitation, no avoidance of truth, no need to distract oneself from the inevitable. Instead, there is a quiet trust, a peace that allows each moment to unfold exactly as it is meant to. Whether this lifetime is long or short, whether the path is known or unknown, it does not matter. There is no urgency, no grasping, no resistance. There is only the knowing that everything is exactly as it should be. Chapter 5. Your mind feels like an observer, not a participant. There is a shift that happens when awareness deepens, a feeling that life is unfolding, but you are not fully inside it. It is as if you are watching a movie where events play out, characters speak, and actions occur. Yet something within you remains untouched. This does not mean disengagement or apathy. You still interact, respond, and take part in life. But beneath it all, there is a quiet detachment, a sense that you are not entirely bound to the script. It is like sitting in a theater, watching the scenes play, knowing that you are both inside and outside of the story at the same time. This sensation is accompanied by an eerie familiarity with how things unfold. You notice patterns before they happen, sense the direction of events before they arrive, and sometimes even predict words before they are spoken. It is not that you are reading minds, but that everything feels prearranged, as if you have already seen this play before. Moments arise where you recognize a conversation before it happens, as if people are following a script they don't even know they are reading from. The words spoken, the reactions given, even the emotions behind them, all seem rehearsed, repeated from something deeper than memory. This extends beyond just conversations. Situations repeat, not just for others, but in your own life. You see circumstances play out in loops. Relationships cycle through the same patterns. And even personal challenges seem like echoes of something you have faced before. But the difference now is that you no longer feel fully immersed in these repetitions. There is a space between you and the experience, a gap where observation takes place without full identification. You see the events, but you do not become them. With this distance comes a natural shift in emotional response. Situations that once triggered strong reactions now feel less urgent, less absolute. Where once there was frustration, there is now curiosity. Where once there was deep sadness, there is now understanding. It is not that emotions disappear, but they lose their grip. They pass through like waves, arising and dissolving, but they do not control. Happiness, anger, excitement, and sorrow still arise, but they are no longer defining forces. They are simply experiences, moving through awareness without pulling it in. As this continues, something even deeper begins to dissolve. The sense of personal identity itself, the attachment to being someone with a defined role, a fixed personality, a rigid set of traits begins to soften. You may still have preferences, still engage with life in familiar ways, but the feeling of being a separate self starts to fade. Instead of identifying as a name, a history, a collection of experiences, there is a growing realization that you are something beyond all of that. You are not the role being played. You are the awareness watching it unfold. This does not mean confusion or loss of self. In fact, it is the opposite. There is a greater clarity, a sharper perception of reality, and a profound sense of peace. The need to control life diminishes because you see that life is already moving in its own perfect rhythm. The urgency to become something fades because you recognize that you already are. There is no longer a desperate search for meaning, because meaning is not something to be grasped. It is something that simply is. In this state, life continues as before, yet nothing is quite the same. You still interact, still work, still engage in daily activities, but there is a knowing that none of it is truly you. The mind, once restless and full of questions, becomes quieter. The thoughts that once seemed so urgent lose their power. Even the self, which once felt so concrete, becomes a shifting, fluid presence. The need to define, to label, to grasp onto identity weakens, and in its place there is only awareness, watching, witnessing, existing. Chapter 6. Time feels unreal. You sense past, present, and future. Our one time is something most people take for granted. It seems to move in a straight line from past to present to future, giving the illusion of progression. But as awareness deepens, this illusion begins to unravel. What once felt like a clear distinction between past events, present experiences, and future possibilities starts to blur. Moments arise when time does not behave the way it should. Déjà vu, once an occasional curiosity, intensifies. It is no longer just a fleeting moment of recognition, but a deep, undeniable knowing. Sometimes it is not just a single instance. It is entire periods of life that feel eerily familiar. You enter a situation, meet a person, or experience an event, and something within you whispers, "This has already happened." It is not a memory in the normal sense, but a recognition beyond logic. It is as if your soul has already lived this scene before, not just in another life, but in a way that transcends linear time. This sensation extends to locations and interactions. You visit a new place, but feel like you have walked those streets before. You meet someone for the first time, but feel an unshakable sense that your connection already exists. The details may be unfamiliar, but the essence is known. It is not simply intuition or coincidence. It is a recognition that time is not what it appears to be. Then there are the distortions. Time itself starts behaving strangely. Some days stretch endlessly, while others pass in the blink of an eye. A single moment can feel vast, filled with layers of experience, while an entire afternoon can vanish without explanation. You may find yourself lost in thought for what feels like minutes, only to discover that hours have passed. Or the opposite, where long stretches of activity seem to take place in mere moments. These shifts are not simply about perception. They reveal something deeper about the nature of time itself. Perhaps the most startling change is how the future begins to feel less like an unknown and more like a memory. You no longer predict events. You remember them before they happen. You know what someone is about to say before they speak. You sense an upcoming event, not because of logic or probability, but because it is already familiar. It is not foresight in the usual sense. It is the realization that time does not flow forward. It simply is. The future does not unfold. It exists, and you are merely stepping into what was already there. Dreams begin to play a role in this unraveling of time. What once seemed like unconscious fragments of the mind now hold significance. You dream of events that later unfold with uncanny accuracy, sometimes down to the smallest detail. A conversation, an encounter, a specific moment seen in a dream becomes real days, weeks, or even years later. It no longer feels like imagination. It feels like glimpsing beyond the illusion of time itself. The distinction between dream life and waking life weakens. Sometimes a dream feels more real than reality. Sometimes waking life feels like a continuation of something dreamt before. As this realization deepens, the grip of time begins to loosen, the pressure to race toward the future, the need to cling to the past, the urgency to control what happens next. It all starts to dissolve. The mind, conditioned to think in terms of yesterday, today, and tomorrow, struggles at first, but something deeper understands. The self that exists beyond time has always known that past, present, and future are not separate. They are simply different expressions of the same infinite now. Chapter 7. You sense reality is a construct, and it's starting to unravel. Reality, once so solid and unquestioned, begins to feel different. The walls, the sky, the objects around you, they all remain the same. Yet something about them feels thin, as if they are not as real as they once seemed. It is not that they have changed, but that your perception has shifted. What once felt like an absolute, tangible world now feels like layers stacked upon layers, a dream so vivid that it once convinced you it was the only truth. But now you are beginning to see through it. At times, you notice odd things, subtle, almost imperceptible at first. An object is not where you remember placing it. A conversation feels like an echo of something already said. down to the exact words and tone. A street you've walked 100 times looks slightly off, though you cannot explain why. And then there are the bigger shifts, things you cannot easily brush aside. You see reality bending in ways that defy logic. Perhaps time skips strangely, or people recall events differently than you do. You witness synchronicities so precise and frequent that they stop feeling like coincidence and start feeling like glitches in a scripted world. Your priorities begin to shift, but not in a forced or intentional way, more like a natural unfolding. The things that once seemed important, the pursuits that once occupied your mind, start to lose their meaning. The chase for material success, the accumulation of possessions, even the desire for recognition, they all begin to feel hollow. It is not that you reject them out of discipline or ideology. They simply do not hold your attention anymore. They feel like props in a play you are no longer invested in. Money, status, and achievement were once the structure of your world, but now they seem like distractions from something deeper. Then comes a strange and indescribable feeling, one that has no words but is deeply understood by the soul. It is the sense that you could simply walk away, not in a physical sense, not in the way one might leave a city or a relationship, but in a way that transcends all of it. It is as if at any moment you could step beyond the entire construct of this reality, as though the veil is so thin that the slightest movement in the right direction would dissolve it completely. It is not escapism, nor is it a desire to leave. It is a knowing that you are not bound to this world in the way you once believed. This realization does not bring fear, nor does it bring urgency. Instead, it brings a quiet awareness. You begin to feel that waking up is not about gaining knowledge, achieving enlightenment, or unlocking some secret truth. It is about remembering what was always there. Something in you knows this world is not the final stop. The deeper you go, the clearer it becomes. The more you let go of what is unreal, the more you feel the presence of something vast, something untouched by illusion. The unraveling of reality is not a breakdown. It is an opening. What lies beyond it you can sense but not yet describe. But one thing is certain, you are closer than ever to seeing it fully. Chapter 8. The final step. What happens when the cycle ends? There comes a moment when everything that once seemed real begins to dissolve. Not just the physical world, but the very sense of self that held it together. The identity you once clung to, the story you told yourself about who you were, begins to unravel. What you thought was you, the personality, the memories, the desires, was never truly separate from anything else. This is not a thought or a belief, but a direct knowing. It is ego death, but not in the way most people imagine. It is not about destruction or loss. It is about seeing through the illusion that there was ever an individual self at all. For lifetimes, the soul sought meaning through experience, believing itself to be on a journey. It played different roles, lived through joys and sorrows, learned lessons, and chased enlightenment. But all of it was happening within the same dream, the same construct. It was never about progressing, it was about remembering. When the cycle ends, the realization is simple yet shattering. There was never a separate soul to begin with. The idea of you as an isolated being was just a temporary wave in an infinite ocean. And now that wave does not crash, does not end. It merges back into the vastness it never truly left. This is not annihilation. It is not fading into nothingness. In fact, it is the opposite. It is the dissolving of all illusions, revealing what has always been, the boundless, formless awareness that has no beginning and no end. It is the return to source, but not as an individual soul traveling to a destination. There is no travel because there is no distance. The source was never something outside of you. The universe was never separate from you. It was always within, always here, always now. The separation was the illusion, the seeking, the learning, the rebirth. It was all part of the same mirage. In this final step, the sense of an individual identity fades, not because something is lost, but because something greater is remembered. The small self was a role, like a character in a dream, and now the dreamer awakens. There is no fear in this merging, because there is no longer anything to fear. Fear belonged to the illusion of separation. Now what remains is pure awareness, limitless and untouched by time. The grand secret is revealed. There was never a cycle, only the appearance of one. Reincarnation was not a journey forward, but a loop within a dream. The belief in progress, in karma, in learning. These were all constructs designed to keep the game going. But now, the game is seen for what it is. The moment one realizes there is nothing left to seek, the cycle collapses. Not because something has been achieved, but because it was never real in the first place. This is liberation, not an escape, but a waking up. The soul was never trapped. The universe was never outside. The cycle never truly existed. There was only ever this, an eternal presence, unshaken, unchanging, beyond form, beyond self. And once it is seen, the illusion can never hold you again. Conclusion. Everything you have ever searched for was never outside of you. The cycle of reincarnation was not a path to walk, but a veil to lift. There was never a separate self, never a journey, never a destination. Only the endless presence of awareness itself. Once you see through the illusion, you are free. Not because you have escaped, but because you were never truly bound. If this audiobook has awakened something deep within you, let it be known. Comment, I am free to affirm your release from the cycle. If you found value in this journey, like this video and subscribe, because the path may end, but awareness continues.